Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Success is a Choice podcasting network. We appreciate you joining us, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Rumble. Maybe you're listening to this on the audio version, wherever you get it. Thank you so much for doing that. If you get a chance, please go over and hit the little subscribe, the like, the thumbs up button, whatever you do to give this show a little bit of love or to share it with somebody else. We have a very special guest today. Joining us is Chris Robinson. Chris Robinson is the Executive Vice President of Maxwell Leadership. Many of you are familiar with John Maxwell's books, his leadership philosophies, all that kind of stuff. You've been impacted so much. Well, Chris is Vice President of his organization. So we're going to dive into a lot of all that here in just a minute. But Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jamie, thanks so much for having me here today. Excited to be with you and talk about a little bit of leadership here today.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. And we are going to get to leadership, and we're going to get to, the 1.3 bajillion books that John has written. I think he'll write 2 by the time we record this podcast. But before that, hard-hitting question, most important question. You were a baseball player.
Yes.
Okay, well, you have 6 kids. You have
That's correct.
You have triplets,
Yep.
you have twins, and
Yep.
you have singles.
Yep.
Now, was there any thought of hitting for the cycle of,
No.
of getting quads, of going for a home run there?
That's over with, Jamie. That's over with. That's over with. So we are done with kids, but just yesterday, we got a brand new dog to add to the mix. So the dog was a trade-off. And it was a trade-off. I made a purchase, and then it was the trade-off for the dog is what my wife and kids got. So the dog's name is an indicator of what I purchased. The dog's name is McLaren. And so the dog's name is McLaren. So there was a trade-off, but it was an emotional decision. And now I'm starting to think, man, did I make the right call? Add the dog to the mix. Oh my goodness.
Well, which has brought more joy to the life of the family?
The first McLaren.
So what did the McLaren replace?
It did not. It was an addition. Okay,
excellent. Well, you are Executive Vice President with Maxwell Leadership, and you've come a long way. I understand our research says that you got kicked out of college a few times.
Indeed, I did.
So not a bad deal, not a bad little journey going from getting kicked out to being executive vice president. Yeah. Give us a little background there. Give us a little bit of that story.
Yeah, a lot of people ask about that question. I got kicked out of college 6 times, and people always ask the question, Chris, well, how'd you get kicked out of college 6 times? But the better question is, how did I get back into college, 5 times? And it's because I had an undeveloped skill set at that age. And so, my children have heard of that story as well, too. And so anytime there's a little bit of a grade that's off, whatever the case may be, of course, they bring that up. But my son, he actually had missed a paper that was turned in. And so for about a 2-week period, he had an F in a class. And so, being the good parents that we want to try to be, we're on top of him like, hey, look, you got to get this F up. And then he began to give me a good talk, where all these books begin to pay off. He was like, look, my grades don't define me. That one failure is not who I am. And he says, do you want me to experience this now as a young kid so I understand the value of failure? Or do you want me to experience this when I'm older? And so he gave me the whole riot act. And so I'm like, okay, well, the good news is the stuff is sinking in. The bad news is, hey, the boy still had an F in, but he got it up. But being kicked out, several times. And, I went to school to go play baseball, and I enjoyed the lifestyle of playing baseball versus actually going to school for school. And the traditional education was not really for me. I didn't have an interest in it. I always had an interest in being an entrepreneur and doing different things. And after getting kicked out of there 6 times, I went to begin to sell. So I sold everything from futons to furniture to clothes to perfume and cologne on the street to eventually I landed myself back at a community college where I began to then I got an internship for a finance company. So at the age of 20, I was actually licensed as a stockbroker. So I had a Series 7, 63, 65. And so I was a fully licensed stockbroker. And I was going back to school at that time, and I was now taking finance courses, personal finance. And I came to a course in personal finance at the community college, and I had a higher license than my teacher. And so the teacher asked me, he says, well, Chris, will you teach the stock portion of the class? And, because you have a higher license than I do, would you teach the stock portion to the class? And so I taught that portion of the class. And then after that, I said, if I'm teaching the class, I don't think I'm in the right class. So, so I left college again after that. It's been an incredible ride.
So what kind of a salesperson were you? You said you sold just about everything.
Yeah.
So what were the qualities that I assume made you a pretty good salesperson?
Well, when it comes down to sales, I really think it boils down to likability. If you can be a likable person, it makes it very easy to sell. I mean, all things being equal, people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And if you're great at building a rapport and being approachable, and you are listening and actively listening, it makes sales a whole lot easier. But if you're just trying to gimmick a tactic, manipulation, going down that path, sales can be very difficult. But at the end of the day, what made me a good salesperson was simply being likable. But it wasn't until I shifted out of that. I didn't have any financial success at any of those. Those were great experience, but I didn't make any good tangible money. And I remember getting into, once I became a financial advisor, again, I was 20 years old, so no one wanted to give me a mass amount of money. My clientele base was other 20-year-plus-year-olds that had, $1,000 maybe, and no, adults were giving me a mass amount of money. So what that did was that led me into the insurance world because there was a higher paying commission, a faster way to build the book. And so I got into that. And I remember, at that time, I was like, oh, my goodness. Now, I was struggling, and I was 20 years old, and I got into the insurance game. And I had thought I made it, Jamy, because I got into this company. In the first week, I went out, I sold a policy. I made $1,200 in a day. I thought, oh, my goodness, this is it. I have found it. Oh, my goodness. Well, at that very same week, my wife was good friends with a owner of a small call center at that time. And she came to us. They were going through a divorce at the time. And my wife was just great friends with her. And we knew that they were really well off. And so her and her husband got back together that week. And she says, hey, you guys have been such great friends of ours. I'd like you to meet my husband. And we don't want you guys to struggle anymore. My husband wants to offer you a sales job. Now I said, well, I just started with this company this week. I just made $1,200 in a day. I'll go talk to him on Friday and we'll go from there. Well, I walk into this guy's office and he says, hey, my wife says that you've been great to her. And I want to offer you a job. We're just getting started. We've got 17 employees. And he says, well, Chris, if you're okay at this, he's like, you can make between $8,000 and $10,000 a month. Now I'm looking around the room going, what in the world are we talking about here? $8,000 to $10,000. I mean, so I had just made this $1,200, and here's this guy talking to me about making $8,000 to $10,000 a month. And so I said, well, I just took a job this week. I'll think about it. He goes, oh, don't think about it. Come in on Monday. So I called my wife and I said, hey, he's offering me this job. He's talking about $8,000 to $10,000 a month if I'm okay at this. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I guess I'll give it a shot. So I go back into the office of the company that I just started with. And in my office, they had these little cubbies where you pick up your check for that week. And it was an advance on commission. So I pick up my check and I go back into the office and I said, hey, you know what? I found this other opportunity. I think I want to take on this other opportunity. And, I think I want to step away. They said, well, that's interesting. We're going to need that check in your hand. Now, I needed that check more than I needed that next breath of air, Jay. That was the heaviest $1,200 that I had ever handed back over in my life. And I go, oh, my goodness, what in the world I do? And so I go into that company on Monday, and then that's where I found not only a way to sell over the phone. I went into that company. The first month made $10,000 as a sales rep on the phone, and then had grew with that company from 18 employees all the way up to 800 in a 6-year time period. So it was a phenomenal run, but that's where I really got my leadership roots. That's where I learned how to not just lead, but develop other leaders. That's when I got into personal growth and development. That's where I experienced explosive growth. That's when I found adding value to people. So been an incredible journey.
Well, you said something there. You said a lot of things that were interesting. First thing that I thought of was, $1,200 a day. Most people would love that, but the problem is you're not guaranteed that every day.
That's correct.
Just like, especially when you were starting off speaking, a lot of speakers, they're like very excited because they get this big check for going and speaking.
Yeah.
But they don't do it every day.
That's right.
But no, you said something very interesting that a lot of our listeners would understand, but not everybody. This is kind of a new concept. It's leaders developing leaders. And you said that was kind of something that you started to grab a hold of. That was a passion of yours. A lot of people, especially if you turn on TV or just in your daily actions, leaders aren't trying to develop other leaders. Leaders are trying to have people serve them. Leaders are trying to utilize their power. So talk a little bit about the leaders developing leaders concept and why that was attractive to you.
That's a mindset that's counterculture. But if you shift that, life begins to explode. Because here was the thing, is that I knew that I was a good salesperson. All right. All things being equal, on paper, I still looked the same as everybody else. I would be in the top 3. I didn't have a degree. Not that mattered or anything, but in some companies and cultures, they do. I came in early. I stayed late. So did all the top reps. The top 10 would always have those characteristics in place. But I said, I've got to begin to set myself apart. What can I do differently? And so that's when I began to take courses by John Maxwell in the basement of a church, taking the 21 laws of leadership. And in that, the very first law is the law of the lid. The law of the lid says that a person's leadership ability determines their overall effectiveness. Now, if you can, if you look on a axis or a graph, right, and you look at, hey, your skill set on a scale of 1 to 10, I could probably increase. I was about an 8.5 as a salesperson. So if I really tried really, really hard, I can maybe pick up another 1%, maybe get to a 9, 9.2, 9.5, maybe, but you'd never be a 10 just because of consistency and being human. But if you look at the other part of the graph that goes up and down, well, now if you add leadership ability to your skill set, you increase your overall effectiveness. But here's what I found. I found out that I could be more valuable to a company if I wasn't the star. This was the shift. This was the paradigm shift. I said, oh my goodness, if I'm not the star, if I'm the star, there's only one of me. Okay. But if I can become a star creator, oh my goodness. And once I realized that, and I began to not say, hey, how can I be the best sales manager or how can I be the best salesperson, but how can I be the manager that produces the most managers? Incidentally, I produced the highest producing teams, but I opened up doors for other managers, now became more valuable to the company because I was producing people, not just numbers. And when you make that shift, oh, your value goes off the charts.
Now, was John Maxwell's writings, his philosophies instrumental in that, or did you kind of come upon that before you were introduced to John Maxwell?
No, that was the whole shift. I mean, the 21 Laws of Leadership, still to this day, it's the best-selling leadership book of all time. I've read over 1,000+ books, Jamie, a lot of them being leadership books. And there we go. That's the one. And there is not a book, a leadership book that you can read that you can't point back to the laws. And so I love that book. I love the study of that book. I taught that book every single week for a decade solid because that's the foundation. So if anyone watching, you don't have that book and you say that you want to grow, you need to get that book. That's the one.
Yeah, that's a great book to start with. And in fact, we'll talk about it a little bit later, if you want to join the Maxwell leadership team, but that's one of the first things you do with joining the Maxwell leadership team is go through that book and look through that book. It stands up today. It was written a few years ago and it still stands up. But what are some of the other books that I know it's hard to choose? It's like if I asked you which of your kids you like better, but Maxwell's written a lot of books. What are some of the other ones that have meant a lot to you?
Yeah, well, there's 5 books that I read every single year. Okay, there's 5 books that I read every single year. 2 of those are Maxwell books. So the 21 Laws is a book that I'll get through every year. The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell is another one because it is a personal growth map and plan. That book will help you get clear on where you want to go, be more intentional about things. Just phenomenal. Another book that I read and love that had a great impact was The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Great fable story book. The misbelief about that book is that one, they think it's true. It's not. He actually wrote this in like a 4-hour window one night. And so it's just a great book though, on mindset. The 4th book would be 12 Pillars by Jim Rohn and Chris Widener. Again, another fable. And then the first book that I ever read when I was actually selling perfume and cologne on the street was Think and Grow Rich. And so every single morning before we would go out and sell perfume and cologne on the street, we'd come into the office, we would read a chapter from Think and Grow Rich, and then we would go out into the workplace. And so that's not one that I'm like, oh man, you got to have that. But I can never let go of that one because that was actually the first full book that I had ever read in my life. And that was at age 19. So I got to keep that one around.
Well, I don't know when you were playing baseball if they had walk-up songs, if they had started doing that yet. But some people have walk-up songs or motivational things. Yours was reading a chapter of Think and Grow Rich.
That's right.
So you were speaking. What you were coaching, doing sales training, got into speaking. Yeah. How did you get connected then, go from reading John Maxwell's book to actually being in his organization?
Yeah. So that was a little bit of a gap in time, because when I started reading John Maxwell material and implementing it, the Maxwell leadership team did not exist at that point in time. And so I was reading and studying on my own. I was actually taking John's courses into the workplace, playing his videos, and then facilitating questions around it. But it was actually at a conference. I want to say it was around 2006 or 7. It was TD Jakes' very first Mega Fest. And it was a big conference that TD Jakes used to hold, but it was the first time that he had did it. It was at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. The whole dome is just completely full. But there was a breakout session in one of the vendor halls, and I go to this vendor hall, and they had a speaker showcase going. Now, a speaker showcase is kind of like a fashion show for speakers. They come out, they've got 3 to 5 minutes, and they're giving their best talk. Well, I sat in front of that stage like a moth to light and watched these speakers, and they came out and, they were speaking, they had books, they had CDs, they were well dressed. But at the end of it, they said the magic words, these people get paid to speak. And I said, oh my goodness, I like the sound of that. Now, they said, if you'd like to find out more about getting paid to speak, come on to the back of the room. We'd love to tell you about it. Now, I ran back there as fast as I could, Jamie, and out of breath, I lean over on the table and say, I'd like to find out more about getting paid to speak. They said, well, we have a 3-day boot camp for $997. We'd love to have you come. And I said, no, absolutely not. $997 for a 3-day boot camp. Now, that was the first time that I had ever heard the words of being invited to something outside of a traditional schooling. And so that was just like a shock to my body, my mind, everything. And, but now I had this seed of I could get paid to speak in my mind. I turned down that opportunity for a 3-day boot camp with Les Brown. The things you miss. Now, but I went back. I began to take my sales role more seriously. Now, here's the thing that I think people miss is that they miss the opportunity to enhance or develop right where they are. A lot of people think they can want to make the jump to be a full-time speaker, coach, and trainer and just quit and leave their job. But there's opportunities right there inside of your workplace oftentimes for you to step up in a leadership role that's going to give you opportunities to speak more, to train more, to coach more if you do it. So I took advantage of that. I had a sales meeting every week that I had to do. Well, I became more intentional about that, and I would, put little talks together for each and every single week. I began to host a 1-day seminar where I would train the other managers how to speak, and they would do a little speaking session. And I was developing right where I was at. I also began to join my local Toastmasters, begin to get in speaking competitions, things of that nature. And, I got into getting a coach, and then that helped me develop in other areas. And so it was 2011, so about a 4 or 5 year gap. In 2000, about a 4-year gap. 2011 is when Maxwell offered certification for the first time. But when I saw that, I knew that was my bridge. That was my bridge because I didn't know how to monetize a soft skill like leadership development. And they had all the tools, all the resources, John's name. I didn't have to go out and build my brand of Chris Robinson leadership that nobody knew. And so it was a no-brainer. But when I looked at that program, I said, I'm going to be one of the top coaches in that program. And I knew it was one of two things. It was either a paid program or an apprentice-style competition because the TV show, The Apprentice, was big at the time. And I said, either way, I'm going to be an apprentice for John Maxwell, or I'm going to be one of the top coaches in this paid program. But that's my bridge to growth. So I knew it when I saw it, man.
Well, most people will say that they're scared to death to get in front of others and speak. And in just a few minutes, we're going to come back to you, Chris, and we need to know the tips and advice you would give somebody that's scared to get up and speak. But first, we want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by the leadershipplaybook.com. We all want strong and healthy cultures with our teams, and the best way to have a good culture is by having great teammates and positive leaders. That's where the leadershipplaybook.com can help you out. In fact, you'll get 25% off the price when you use coupon code CHOICE, as in success is a choice. So whether you're a coach, administrator, parent, or student athlete, you'll want to visit the leadershipplaybook.com and use coupon code CHOICE to get yourself 25% off. So, Chris, people are scared to death to get up in front of others and speak. So give us the secret sauce to speaking in front of others.
Well, I mean, it's practice and repetition. Okay. So in order to grow in anything, you need 3 things. You need 3 things to grow in any area, whether it's speaking, whether it's your finances, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your leadership. You need 3 things. You need knowledge. Okay. So a lot of people are scared of speaking because they've never even studied speaking, So ask yourself the question, how many books have I read on speaking? How many videos have I watched on speaking? And chances are it would be 0 to none for most people that are petrified to speak in front of a group. The second thing that you need is experience or practice. Okay. How many times have you practiced? This is where, for me, Toastmasters was a great place to go and practice different pieces of content. It's a low cost way for you to get out in your community, get around other people that are trying to enhance their communication skills. And it allowed for me to practice speaking. And then the third thing that you need a coach or a mentor if you want to grow in any area. And, for me, I knew that in order for me to grow, I always want someone that's a little bit further ahead of me to help guide me and give me feedback and nurture me along the way. So if you want to improve your speaking skills, get some knowledge, get some experience, some practice, and get some coaching and mentoring.
Well, has there been a time when you've been up on stage and you've had an uh-oh moment, or something didn't go quite according to plan, or you had to improvise, or just even maybe not that, but just a memorable experience?
Oh yeah. I mean, something goes wrong all the time. And it was funny. Just 2 weekends ago, at the church I was attending, there was an Amber Alert went off in the middle of it. And, the pastor responded well. And I turned to my daughter and I said, when something happens like this, you've got a couple different choices. You can, number one, something goes wrong you're on stage, you can ignore it. Okay. You can keep rolling through it. There's been times where we've been filming. And I remember I was actually during the COVID time, we were in studio doing a lot of filming. And I was in the middle of pre-recording a presentation. I am 45 minutes into a 60-minute keynote. And then all of a sudden, someone in the room's phone goes off. That person, I'm going to go ahead and name him, CEO Mark Cole. His phone's going off and his ringtone is Mary J. Blige just blaring in the background. So I'm ignoring, I'm talking louder, trying to talk over it, but he's trying frantically to cut it off, but it just keeps getting louder and louder and louder, which we had to stop. So your first choice is to ignore it. The second choice is to acknowledge it and play along with it. Okay, so you could, if something's not working, don't get frustrated, don't get mad. You can acknowledge it and play along with it, and incorporate that into the talk. And so you got a couple different options when that things happen, but something happens every single time. Your slide deck may not work. Your microphone may go out. You name it. If it's happened to me.
Yeah, well, you joined the John Maxwell certified leadership team early on. That you've progressed throughout. You obviously have been a big fan of not only the material, what you started with, but the organization itself, because you've grown to be the executive vice president of it. Talk a little bit about what that program offers in terms of the Maxwell leadership certification. I have a number of people all the time ask me about it, and maybe why it's something they should be doing. Yeah. Who does it? What makes it different than maybe other certification programs out there?
Yeah, well, it's a phenomenal program that has the potential to be perfect for a lot of people. Typically we have 3 different types of people that are joining. The first type of person that we have join is a person that says, hey, I like my job, what I'm doing. I want to enhance my own personal skills, because if I can enhance my skills as a coach, that would help me become a better leader. If I can enhance my communication skills as a speaker, that can help me stand out and get promoted on my job, because you have to present. The second type of person is someone that's maybe coming towards the back end of their career, looking towards retirement, has always had this desire inside to be a speaker or a coach. Or it's that person that they work a full-time job now and they hate their job and they've always had this dream to coach, speak, and train. And then the third type of person that we help is that person that's already coaching, speaking, training, that wants to add some credibility, some content. But most importantly, I think what separates us is our community. We have over 46,000 coaches around the world that have been through our certification. And that community of being around like-minded people is just absolutely off the charts. There's nothing else comparable to it. And I mean, I'm sitting here today, yes, because of the program, yes, because I took action, but most importantly, because of the community and the relationships that I've built throughout the community is the reason I'm here today.
Yeah, I think most of the people, close to 50,000 Maxwell leadership, certified people and trainers, coaches, speakers out there. And I think most would have a similar story to yours. And, one of the main common themes is John Maxwell. Obviously, he's written all the books. He's the leadership expert. It's his company. But for those people that maybe aren't as familiar with John Maxwell, and we probably should have talked about this more at the start, but for those that aren't as familiar with him, or even those of us who are, serve as a reminder to us, what makes John Maxwell so special, as opposed to, the world, there's plenty of noise. There's plenty of people out there on social media that are quote unquote leadership experts, but what makes John Maxwell different?
Well, number one, he's the number one, ranked the number one leadership guru in the world. And he's written 87 books that have been published. There's not a author on the planet in history that has, there's not a leadership author on the planet in history, his publishers tell us this, that has written more content on leadership than him, period, to ever live. Is just amazing. But I think the separator is that John is a match with who he is in his books. Now, because of my role and being inside this industry, I've met a lot of authors, okay, and a lot of big name speakers and celebrities. And oftentimes I've read their books and, I'm going, oh man, I love their books and I can't wait to meet this person. And then I meet them and then I say, oh, I love their books. John is the opposite of that. And of all the people that I've met, to see his not only writing be in alignment with who he is just truly encouraging, because some things are taught, but some things are caught. And I think that I have been taught a lot from John Maxwell, but I have caught so much more just being within inside of proximity of him, in the way that he adds values to people, the way that he honors people, the way that he shows interest in people, the way that he serves people. I mean, truly just a unique individual.
And that's a great lesson for all of us, whether we're parents, coaches, educators, quote unquote bosses, CEOs, whatever our role or status or position is, not just teaching something, not just to have said we taught it, but that it was caught, that they see us. Too oftentimes we'll talk to coaches about we are good as coaches at setting the standard, but we're not always as good about being the standard. Right. We teach things, but we don't always live it out ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's a great thing to hear about John Maxwell. So we'll get you out on this last question. You grew up a baseball fan. Yeah. Who did you envision when you went out in the backyard, playing stickball or playing baseball, or you went to the Little League fields? Who did you envision you were when you were young?
Hey, that's easy. That's prime time. Deion Sanders.
Is that right?
I grew up in that area. It was prime time all day long.
Well, very good. Now, so were you, when you played backyard football, when you played football, were you prime time there also?
Same guy.
Did you have the dance? Did you have the moves?
Indeed I did.
Well, prime time is definitely making some noise as a football coach now. He's definitely making some things happen. There's no doubt about that.
And I mean, it's interesting to see as well too, to see him at this level, but still the way that he's training and developing leaders is just amazing to see at this point in life. And for that to be on Spotlight, I love the work that he's doing, the attention that he's bringing to the sport and for the athletes overall. It's just neat to see. So it's awesome to see him emerging back into a radar that I'm watching, as I did when I was a kid.
Well, he's definitely been a little bit polarizing. Some people, not everybody has liked all the change and all the action that's going on around him, but he's really done something that not every coach can embrace, and that's old school and new school coaching.
That's right. That's correct.
He's kind of blending it together, and because those kids that play for him, they love him. And they run through walls for him, where a lot of coaches say, well, kids these days aren't motivated, or they won't run through a wall for you. Well, they will if, like you said, they know, like, and trust you. And Deion has Coach Prime has been able to do that with his players.
Yeah, I love the blend that he's bringing, because he's bringing an old school mentality, but he's bringing a new school marketing that's not only it's helping these players get on the radar, it's helping them earn income. I mean, so he is bringing the best of both worlds, his celebrity ability as well as his playing ability and coaching ability. Just amazing to see and watch. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, he's been he's Chris Robinson. He's the executive vice president of Maxwell Leadership. Check him out, maxwellleadership.com. If you care about leadership, which you do because you're watching this, you wouldn't be watching this otherwise. You love leadership, or you're passionate about helping people, making a difference, being the change you want to see in the world, all that kind of stuff. That's important to you, or else you wouldn't be watching Success is a Choice. So check them out, maxwellleadership.com. Thanks, everybody, for watching this, for tuning in. If you would be so kind, leave a little 5-star review. You don't even have to like me, but maybe you liked what Chris Robinson had to say today. You can say, hey, that C-Rob article, that C-Rob episode, Chris Robinson was awesome. Love John Maxwell books, 5-star, great stuff. Or share this with a friend, somebody you know likes leadership or likes books. Turn them on to the John Maxwell books. But until next time, please remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?